Today, Rinpoche gave a thorough explanation of the steps recognizing sentient beings are our mother, remembering their kindness, and wishing to repay their kindness that lead up to the realization of love. So Okay, so if everybody wants to turn to 35, 36, 37 section of Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. Once again, we're looking at is this okay? We're looking at the section on training the mind in the stage of the path for beings of great capacity. And then we're specifically now arriving at the chapter on the 7-point cause and effect personal instruction, or the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So when we look at Lama Tsongkhapa's actual outline, we see we have the gradual training, and then that's broken down into 3 categories. Training the mind to be intent on others' welfare, training the mind to be intent on enlightenment, and then identifying the spirit of enlightenment, the fruit of the training. So identifying bodhicitta, which is the result of all of this training. So then further looking at the outline on page 36 in the English now, we have training the mind to be intent on others' welfare. So this is that subcategory that has 2 categories. Establishing the basis for developing this attitude. So there first has to be a basis created that makes it conducive for the arisal of this attitude. So what is this first basis that one needs to establish? Second, the development of the attitude of being intent on others' welfare. So changing one's self-concerned attitude to one that cherishes others. So then that first category, establishing the basis for developing this attitude, we have 2 categories: achieving impartiality toward living beings, and then the second category of having affection for all beings. So when we begin with this first category, establishing the basis for developing this attitude, we have the points made within it of the categories that lead up to love through the force of attraction or through the force of affection. So when we look at the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, we have first recognizing all sentient beings are our mothers. The second category is remembering their kindness. The third category, wishing to repay their kindness. And then in dependence upon these three steps, or these three causes, we have the arisal of love through the force of attraction, or the cultivation of love. And then that falls under the category of the development of the attitude of being intent on others' welfare. So we first go through the establishing the basis of this, developing this attitude, and then we go through those two categories, and then arrive at the arisal of love, which is under the major heading, the development of the attitude of being intent on others' welfare. So that's how the outline works, and we'll move forward from there. Okay, Khensur Rinpoche.
다 생냐바 drupa 용게 나바진 drupa 니 나는 생냐바 drupa스나 다 소소 자니 바마송부들레 네 니를 차바도 달 당와 바마 요원도 마예바 생데 냐부 주고 그래서 생냐부 냐부데 사진담으레스 당주 사제 어데 생냐부도 냐부도 어데 사진담으레스 사지제 샴비 줄내시 아니 용기 잡아도 춘다면 그래서 말해 희지 아니 어떠냐고 사지들에 샴비 주던 희지 사변 떠봐이나 아니 샤주 생각 이제부터 제용으로스 당뇨 사지 샴비 줄내신 희지 사변 주제 매발에 샤생 준신 두빈데부 주스 어디 상상도 빌라주도 여들어 다워서 소렌도 다가데 자니에 바마손의 생년부터 사지담으로스 사지도 말고나 대바침이 조용하여 말이에요.
Then the Yanjer Suralan, the long Kali Yanjer.
론드다 상황도 빌라주.
Lesso.
상황도 고유 사마자가 라주 여들어. 당뇨 사지 자니에 바마손의 생년부터 사지담으로스.
Lesso.
대바침이 조 사지.
Okay.
당뇨도 야부종소나 안 대툴 대바침이 되는 샴바당.
Lesso.
진지 사변도는 샤주 생 대바침으로스. What is one thing that
type? So the first category, establishing the basis for developing this attitude, we have two points, Lama Tsongkhapa states. First, achieving impartiality toward living beings, and then having affection for all beings. So the first category, achieving impartiality toward living beings. What does this mean? When we look at the type of beings that we interact with, we have friends, we have enemies, and we have those who are neutral to us. Our friends we become very attached to. Our enemies we have aversion towards or hatred towards, have some sort of angst in relation to, and our people who are neutral to us, we disregard. We have really no intention, one way or the other, for. Here, we are trying to achieve what is called, at the first stages, what is called equanimity, which is an equal desire to aid all three types of these beings, of friends, enemies, and neutrals. So we find the importance of this in many of the great vehicle texts, but in the Guhya Samaja text, which is the highest Yoga Tantra text, we find the point being made that equanimity is really the foundation for all of the realizations of the great vehicle. So this equanimity serves as a foundation. Equanimity, this equal desire to benefit all types of beings, our friends, enemies, and neutrals, is actually called a foundation, is a basis for the arisal of all of these other types of things. So it's in dependence upon this foundation of equanimity and the water of love and the seeds of compassion that this great vehicle type of realization occurs. So this great vehicle type of love and compassion actually occur, but in dependence upon, first, this foundation of equanimity towards our friends, enemies, and neutrals, and that's an equal desire to be of aid, an equal. So it's Dixon.
다 용어 이제 나바제도 두바들 라리 좀 베이제나 송자 우레야 아니 친 송바가 탈도 ndela 송레스 송자 우레 친 송바가 타마들도 ndela 송레 마공바 전전바 공바 전수 공바 송들이들와 ndela 송레스
Oh, okay, that's good.
ndela 송레 담바 마공바도 용도와 나는 저 팀 송자가 탈리아도 친 송바들도 ndela 송레
hula, de la sunle. Okay, so we're going to begin. Sildu. Okay, so we're going to begin moving forward a little bit. We're actually, if you turn to page 38 now, we're going to begin with the section where the 7 points begin. So we have the first steps under that heading that we spoke of again, which is establishing the basis for developing this attitude. So on page 38, we find the first among the steps of the 7-point cause and effect. And for those taking notes, the major heading now changes from impartiality toward living beings to having affection for all beings in terms of the outline. So under the having affection for all beings section, we begin that 7-point cause and effect, beginning with cultivating a recognition that all beings are your mothers. So this is where we will begin, page 38, first step.
다 전부 마공바들와 안에 ndela 손레 마공바네스 코아 도마메베 랑기 지와라 도마메베나 코알 도마요 말에 안에 랑기 지와라 도마요 말에스 랑기 지와라 도마요 말에 네 지와다 쇼와 주마제데 안셰네 주마제데 코아나르 네 코아나 르드 말랑 샤와탄 코아나 르드 말랑 샤와탄 사슌데 마지셰 샤와네 예멜라스 코아나 데네 와데가 주냐와게 르레요아레 다고 르레요 든두고 르레요 사유 르레요 르 말렌스야 요마레스 코아나 르드라 르드 말랑 샤와탄 슌더 마지셰 샤와네 예멜라스 내가 자갈지 녀월지 달지 할지 어 참말지 요레스 슌데 마지셰 샤와네 예멜라스 안에 말아수비 녀동 마주바메트 생전 참말로 안에 가서 마제녀레 파제녀레 스시다다 바다다 어 참아제 요레스 만여베제 요 말레스 녀동 마주바메데 whatever rebe duba timba rebe duba sinja je mai ba rebe duba to long duba ni na ne tombu de rebe duba de do ta anda du de re.
Okay. So we begin with cultivating a recognition that all beings are your mothers. Then he did Jayan Sheba Ewasum? Okay, the Jayan Sheba. So this first category, cultivating a recognition that all beings are your mothers, Jayan Sheba in his commentary states that there are 3 parts to this section. So for anyone who's new, we're using another commentary to explain the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and it's called the 4 interwoven commentaries on the difficult points of the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. And one of those commentators is in that interwoven commentary is Jayan Sheba. So Rinpoche uses a lot of Jayan Sheba's points that explain the difficult points within this text. So Giant Sheba states that there are 3 sections to this first step of cultivating a recognition that all beings are your mothers. The first section is achieving this through analysis. Or first is establishment by reasoning, signs and reasoning. Let's see. I'll read and then do the commentary. Because cyclic existence is beginningless, your births are also without beginning. Therefore you have died and been reborn time and time again. There is absolutely no kind of body which you have not assumed in cyclic existence. There is absolutely no place where you have not been born, and there is no person who has not been a relative such as your mother. So this is the first section, the establishment through reason. And then the next category, number 2, is establishment through scripture. So we first have the signs and reasoning presentation, and then we'll have Asanga's levels of yogic deeds and the quote there, and this is the second point, the establishment through scripture. So here it says, cyclic existence is beginningless, so our births are as well. Our own birth has no beginning. It says, therefore you have died and been reborn time and time again. We take on a birth, we live that life however long it is, and then we die, and then we take on another life, are born, and then we live that however long that is, and then we die, and then this process goes on and on and on. And that process has no beginning. It's beginningless. So our own birth is beginningless, and what that means is there is absolutely no kind of body which you have not assumed in cyclic existence. So in this beginningless series of rebirths, these beginningless rebirths that my continuum has had, there is no body, whether it's a hell body, a hungry ghost body, an animal body, a human body, a demigod body, a god's body. There's no type of body that my continuum hasn't abided in, hasn't been in. And there's no place where whatever that body was, that some body that was in my continuum, that held my continuum, was born. So there's no place that my continuum, that I'll use the I, because when we posit what is the continuum, what are we even talking about? It's an I that isn't truly established as a translator's note, but it's this I. So this beginningless rebirth of this continuum has taken place. There's no place that this continuum hasn't been born. There's no type of being we haven't been. And there's no relationship we haven't had with every sentient being. So every sentient being has been our mother, has been our father, has been our relative, has been our friend, enemy, and neutral, etc. So we've been everywhere there is to be, we've been everything there is to be, and we've had every relationship with every sentient being that there is to have. We've been in India, we've been in America, we've had all of these experiences. So this is the point that's being made here. It's established through reason. Because of beginningless birth, we have had beginningless types of bodies, which are beginningless types in beginningless places in beginningless relatives, etc. So this is what we are analyzing, basically. These are the signs and reason that are being presented as a consequence to beginningless birth. This is the analysis section, and then we next move on to Asanga's levels of yogic deeds, where we have establishment through scripture. Digsung Rinpoche.
다 고알로 도마메 랑게 제와로 도마메스
Less so.
도마메바데 송고로다 다 랑게 제와로 도마메바데 아니 아버지 내송난 생에 건가 집어 말베 아니 랑게 제와로 도마메바데 간데스나 아니 가서 어디 네 랑레 온종오다 아부다 로송요 말베
Less so.
아니 가서 셰반도
Less so.
셰바드 간네 용버스
Less so.
네 아밍을 지만타비 셰바드 간네 용버스나 아니 바두이 셰바는 용버스 말베 바두이 쉐바는 용바래 바두이 쉐바도 가는 용바 대응 한번 좀 대응 한번 도마매 버레스 저는 오바당 세당 아주로 어디 가는 용바 대응 한번 도마매 버레스 저는 어버에 도마매 버레스 어버당 로당 쉐바선도 도마매 버인다 로당 어버서 여긴 간자대한 도마매 버레스 나 도마매 버레스 나 도마매 버레스 나 신제 참아 도마매 버 들었던 좋은 거다 나를 도마매 젠달 도마요 시 도마로 알아 what did you say to the mother
Less so. Okay. So here we state that cyclic existence has no beginning, and our rebirths have no beginning. So if we can establish that we have beginningless rebirth, then we are able to look at other sentient beings and say, they're the same as I. They have beginningless rebirth as well. So like myself, all sentient beings have beginningless rebirth. So what does this mean? So where does this all, how is this all established? And we find Dharmakirti's Pramanavartika Karika. Dharmakirti is commentary on the Compendium of Valid Cognition, where there's a presentation of 3 signs to prove this beginningless rebirth. So it states that the breath, the consciousness, and the sense powers arise from the like, not from a dissimilar class. So what that means is where does the consciousness that we have come from? So we would state that the consciousness comes from a previous consciousness, then we trace it back and we would say, well, where does the consciousness of the child in the womb come from? So when we trace our consciousness back, we get to the womb and a being with consciousness in a womb. Where does that come from? We state that that consciousness comes from a previous consciousness in an intermediate state, that comes from a previous consciousness of an alive state before the previous life person died, which comes from the previous consciousness back to the womb, the previous consciousness to intermediate state to the previous consciousness of the prior life. So we say that when we look at the consciousness that we have right now, it comes from a previous consciousness. We trace it back to the consciousness we had in the womb, and then we state that that consciousness in the womb came from a previous consciousness. And we state there's an intermediate state in between death of the last life and the rebirth in the womb of this life. So we state that where does the consciousness in that bardo or that intermediate state come from? It comes from the consciousness of the life before it died. So this is how we establish beginningless consciousness. We state that it didn't come from a dissimilar class or something different from it. It came from consciousness, previous consciousness from previous consciousness. And then when we look at the breathing in and out, we establish the same thing. Breathing in and out comes from previous breathing in and out, from previous breathing in and out. And then we establish like a beginningless breathing in and out of some sort. Sense powers themselves, the 6 sense powers, come from previous sense powers that came from previous sense powers. And we can't establish beginning. We have beginningless sense powers that all came from similar class, that came from previous sense powers, not from something unlike, not from a dissimilar class. It's not possible. So, therefore, if the sense powers and the breathing in and out and the consciousness is beginningless, then there has to be someone or something that has a haver, a holder of that consciousness. So there has to be a being of some sort that had consciousness, that breathed in and out, and that had sense powers. There has to be an owner, if you will, in a very loose way. There has to be ownership, or someone who has consciousness, who breathes in and out, someone who has sense powers. So if all of those things are beginningless, then that who has is beginningless as well. That someone who has these is also beginningless. So that's how we establish beginningless rebirth of this continuum, that this continuum has been beginningless, and all of the things that within it are. So the holder of the consciousness and the consciousness. If either one are beginningless, the other has to be. So we find this as a note. So we find this beginningless consciousness, beginningless sense power, beginningless breathing in and out, that establishes our beginningless rebirth. And so that's from Dharmakirti's Pramanavartika Karika, and how we, since cyclic existence has no beginning, therefore consciousness has no beginning. My consciousness has no beginning, therefore your consciousness, other sentient beings' consciousness have no beginning. And then we find all of the consequences to that beginningless point. Okay, Deeksung.
다 도바돼요. 보고 파마를 제바이 더 파미 제바데.
Less so.
부구 제바데 그래서 뭐 도바요.
Less so.
파미 제바도 부구 제바되고 말했어. 주생 가르스나 파마 개바이나 부구 개바이마다 파마 개바 맨나 부구 개바 매비 쳐본 모두와.
Less so.
파마마 개바라 부구 개바 용아요.
Less so.
파마 개바라 부구 마 개바 용아요. 로데 파미 제바도 부구 제바되고 말했어.
Less so. So then a doubt may arise, and one might think, well, why can't it just be from the parent's consciousness? Why couldn't the child have been somehow given consciousness by the parents somehow? And if that were to be the case, then if the parents were a scholar or very intelligent, the child would have to be that same aptitude of intelligence. If the parent was was not intelligent or was a dullard, then the child would necessarily have to be that if it was the same consciousness. So then this negates the possibility that it's from the parents, because we don't find that pervasive consciousness that where the parent is like this, so the child is necessarily like that, from a consciousness perspective.
다 가서 뭐 어떤 시 찌진했던 산타마이나 편도를 다 맹거 주의나 보대 토만 매번 말해 맹거 주의데 내내 중거래 대편실 맹거 주의여 말해야지 시야문도 어떤다고 말했어.
So another way that might help someone to understand this is to look at a mango tree. Mango tree came from previous mango tree, from a previous mango tree. Non-mango tree has never been what has produced mango tree. So we find this beginningless mango tree when we look at it in those terms, because we don't find non-mango tree able to make mango tree.
당아도 이슈다 힌두는 하이 주바르스간 속에 어때 도바가요 가서 그걸 어때 도바요 말고 당아서 나바지는 어때 시에데 그래서.
Less so. So those who hold other religious beliefs also will have doubts, because for the Christian tradition, the Hindu tradition, many traditions posit a creator God and just state God made all of this. So that is their stance, and this is what we as Buddhists hold as our position.
다도 랑기 저라 토마 매바다 매고 주의라 토마 매바다 속걸로 세리벌 제바 있는 세리벌 개발시라래 페이지 세리벌 켈랜드 그랬어.
So if we were to posit this idea that like our rebirth, like a mango tree, has this beginningless nature to it, if we were to explain that position to a scientist, I wonder what the response would be. I think that a scientist would be able to answer that question. So doubts arise in this section always. This is a doubts, yeah. So this is the section on signs and reason, where we would say the Buddhist science, where we would say the use of signs and reasoning. And that's why Jayan Sheba states that this specific section here is you can break it out and say is the establishment through analysis.
안 사지가 송요 아레스 사용하지 장발레스
Less so.
어떤 롱 두용 아레스
So then we state, okay, so you've established this by analysis, by signs and reasoning, but is this something that the Buddha said? So then we find in Asanga's levels of yogic deeds where Asanga quotes a sutra. So just as a translator's note, there are the Kangjur and Tanjur. The Kangjur are the pronouncements of Lord Buddha. The Tanjur are the authentic Indian commentaries. Asanga's texts fall under the category of authentic Indian commentaries written about pronouncements of Lord Buddha. So this is one of those texts. So where do we find this point? Even though we establish it with reason, did Buddha say it? And then Asanga states yes. Okay.
어제 사용하지 장발레스 그도 어때네 사용하지 소변 봐봐 두면 사용하지 원질 장사변도 될 어때 신다지 라가 많이 저와를 도만 뭐 무슨 요아레스
Less so.
사용하지 장발레 너 간주인지로 와
Less so.
유연전부 대반네 강도 치 유연전부 대반네 강도 치 마지바당 마송와당 마시 사주되는 게 통과고 사지게 근데 저런 어때 유연전부 대반네 네 사자 강도 치 강도 네 강도 치 네 마지바요 막 사자 삼말 치요아레스
Less so.
낸도도 덴도 삼말 치요아레스 제바다 마송아요 막 사자 삼말 로요아레스 마송아다 마시 슈 마시 슈요 말레스 사자 삼말 가서 세요아레스 마시 슈데네 내 통과우스 사지가 문도 송을 다데
Less so.
사지가 통과우스
Less so.
통과우 유연은 대반네 네 세제강 체제 유연은 대반네 세제강 체제 파어 네 유연은 대반네 세제 참아 주는 거 파시만요 바지요 말에 마시만요 바지요 말에
Less so.
네 번호 세제다다 받았다는 거고
Less.
번호 시모 시마 받았다 세제다 시만요 바지요 말에
Less so.
참아 받았다 세제다 시요 말에 근데 소수 흡연 제만요 바지요 말에 소수 캠프 제만요 바지요 말에
Less so.
흡연 남 캠보 라마 라미 네다보 마주바트는 게 통과우스 what is one jig was long then sondos that long drone that
Less so.
통과우 셰송소 was about long drone but
So then we'll read from Asanga's levels of yogic deeds. And it says, Asanga's levels of yogic deeds cites a sutra as follows. So a sutra falls categorically under the Kangjur, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha. So Asanga, whose texts are in the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentaries, now is quoting Lord Buddha. So it's from the levels of yogic deeds. I have difficulty seeing a place wherein you have not been born, gone to, or died in the distant past. I have difficulty seeing any person in the distant past who has not been your father, mother, uncle, aunt, sister, master, abbot, guru, or someone like a guru. So here Asanga is saying that when quoting the Buddha, and the Buddha is stating that in his all-knowing wisdom, he is not able to see a place. The Buddha is not able to see a place or know of a place that a sentient being hasn't been born. So he's speaking to someone, but he's just using that someone as an example of a sentient being, speaking as you to everyone or you to a person, depending on where this sutra took place. So have difficulty seeing a place where you have not been born, gone to, or died in the distant past. So you've died there, you've been born there. There isn't a place where those things haven't occurred. And then Buddha states there isn't a person that I can see that hasn't had every relationship possible with you. So the Buddha is saying you've been in all of the realms, the higher realms, the lower realms, and every sentient being that the Buddha states that he can see has had every relationship with you. So that's the point that's being made here, and this is the establishment of this beginningless nature in order to establish the main point that all sentient beings are our mothers through Scripture. So this is the second part, according to Jayan Sheba, where Lama Tsongkhapa utilizes Scripture to prove this point. Digsung.
어제 다들 어디 송바들 맞대서도 송바 대형 하르사들에 송바
The repeat drupa yanjer.
어디 다리베 두바다도 송바로 와 송바
Lesso.
송바 어디 안에 송바 대형 하르 마셰바 마제스 송바도 어디 신전 사마가 하마 마수 아마셰여레스 마셰바 마제 마오바나 마셰바 조아 타예베 다다상라 랑게 마셰바 달랑야바 템부츠와샤데스 데제나 데네 진템바수 조월할라스 데마제나 네 진템바수지 제메비셔로스 어떤마야 지송도 어때야 네 시제 사망 가서 하마 저 하마 가서 마셔요레스 대양 하르 마셔봐 마제 마오바네 쇼고요 레다 네 마마제바 네 마셔봐 타이바레스 제말라야드네 네 마셔봐 마모모시그레스 마셔봐 조아 타이베 데다르스 데다상라스 데다비산당워레스 네 랑게 마셔봐라 ngaba tempo tsawa shades sinja taje rang mai batel ngaba tempo yabu ji ngaba je gores ne tsawa shade ne ma sheba de yabu je ba ina tenne ti tin tempo su jo la la sa ma de yabu sheba ina do tin tempo de tin su da tin den su jul je le la bures jo la la ma sheba de ma je na 진짜바 진짜수 제메비셔로스 what
Lesso.
yeah.
Okay, and now category number 3 is once again more analysis or just more evidence. So we have first the establishment through reason, and then we have establishment through Scripture, and now we have more proof. I think that would be how it would translate, is more proof of such, or more proof of this. Moreover, all beings have not only previously been your mothers, but will also be your mothers in the future, a limitless number of times. Reflect upon this and become convinced that all beings have been your mothers. Once you develop this conviction, you will then easily remember their kindness and so forth. If you do not develop it, you will have no basis for remembering their kindness. So here, the points are that not only have all of these beings in the past been our mothers, but in the future, they will again, who knows, countless numbers of times. So it doesn't, as a translator's note, I asked Rinpoche before, this limitless number, you won't have a mother when you become a Buddha, so there is a limit to it. And Rinpoche said that means while you are still a sentient being, not a Buddha. You will have this limitless rebirth. So Rinpoche answered that, before, so I just wanted to translate that again because I had asked him that while he was explaining it last time. They will be, until we become Buddhas, the beings that are our mothers will be our mothers again, limitless times. And it says, reflect upon this and become convinced that all beings have been your mothers. So first, it's stating that you have to establish this idea that all beings have been your mothers, to establish that all sentient beings are our mothers in order to easily remember their kindness, wish to repay their kindness, etc., etc. So this first needs to be there as the basis in order for these other realizations to occur. And if this basis is there, then it's very easy to remember the kindness and so forth. But without this basis, it becomes quite difficult. Dixon.
대양하 마셰바 마제 마오바나 마셰바 조 타이베스 제마야 레다 된 마무셰그레스 대달상라 랑기 마셰바 틀랑야 바 신전타제 랑 마임바들 야부시우 템부시우 그레스 나바 템부 저와 샤데 마셰드 줄이 아버제바 이나 아네 마셰드 줄이 아버제바 이나 되네 Chenrezig Chenzo Chilhabure, Chewalhala. Mashed Majena, Chenrezig Suji, Jimebshiros, what about Sumbadre?
Less so. So one really needs to have this conviction that all beings have been our mothers. And then once this is developed, so reflect upon this and become convinced that all beings have been your mothers. Once you develop this conviction, you will then easily remember their kindness and so forth. If you do not develop it, you will have no basis for remembering their kindness.
What that's good, what the church Nalu Sandiba Mavu, Sandiba to Tina, what the Karla Tajin water.
So this section has analysis and points that are made. It'd be interesting to present this to scientists and ask them to interpret it as well.
What the song, what the Sandra, that Masheba, Tintembaro, what the San Tamba in the Mashe Guns over there is Mashe Gun. Jusela then San to Satambaina, Jene Gumba. Jusela Mateba Masan Tambaina, Jogons, Mashe Guns at Jene Gumbata. Ne jogoni yoro wat jusela santan batel chegon lagre ne jusela mateba santan jogon lagro the mashe gonzo wat res.
So this is what meditation on all sentient recognizing all sentient beings are our mothers is. This is what meditation is. There are two types of meditation. There's analytical meditation and single-pointed meditation. If you are using reasoning and signs and so forth, then this is analytical meditation. If there is one focused point and no reasons and no points, then this is single-pointed meditation. So in this case, we're using signs and reasoning, so this is analytical meditation that we're doing. We're analyzing these points to realize something, whereas single-pointed requires no analysis, no reasons. Okay, Dixon.
Oh, the San Tanshaban, the Mashe Gumbaris, Mashe Gumba. Mashe Gunze ya Zozo Jin to Gungwa Yamare, Yen Santana Gumbare, Dun Santana Gumbare, Rudin Santana Gumbaris.
So this is meditation on recognizing all sentient beings are our mothers. It doesn't have to be in some pious or some, he said it like a pious posture, sitting in a specific position and looking very much like your meditator. You can be sitting, you can be laying down, thinking about this, you can be going somewhere, walking. All of this is meditation. It doesn't require us to have to be in some special posture in order to do meditation. This can be done anytime, whether we're going, coming, laying down, sitting, etc.
Ta modern the town roba ina o to santa ba ina soa de de soa marbe.
Soa
sanga ji moda kar maji shelo ni ta de do. O de santa ba ina shelo ya shu des. Duinda ta ji model ji mo ta de mu de. Kashi maji ya. Blessing to start de. O de santa na blessing ya shu des.
So we see all of these things in people's cars, blessed objects to keep you from a car crash and keep you safe, special protection cords and symbols and so forth. But really, the best protection would be thinking about this, this meditation. This is meditation, and that's the real protection, is meditation, thinking about this. So Rinpoche is saying that if you wanted to be kept safe in your car, you'd be kept safer by thinking about this than having some emblem or some sort of blessed object to keep you safe. This is the best blessing of the mind. This is the best way to bless the mind. So this is what we need to do in order to establish the recognizing all sentient beings are our mothers. So the second category, remembering their kindness, we find there are 6 different categories presented. Harmony. Okay, so we'll take a short break, snack time, and we'll be back right after. Thank you. Sheda Sobodu.
What asu Chenrezig ndogu mara. Chenrezig khatu tilo saji chudwa. Chenrezig khatu tilo kwa mara chuyo gore. Chuyo ta jang jebi saji chujayo.
Less so. So this section now, we're moving on to cultivating a remembrance of their kindness. And Jayan Sheba states that there are 6 different points that Lama Tsongkhapa makes in this section. Okay.
Jawa nyoa podu jebatar gombasha tesa. Ne Chenrezig wate susu sindi amad kadin chibuyin wate. Sindi amala mene Chenrezig gomba yina ne juli chila yuares. Kadam gishinye podu sungudus. Podu jebatar gongu res jermuche. Sinjen tanje ma gombe wodos. Chegonto jogoni ma chegonto jogoni gombe wodo. Toma tsindi mala gona susu tsindi amadal gona and Chenrezig chilhawa yuares. Gona chilhawa kadam gishinye podu jebatar gomba shades. Dundu manaba sebo shi sanlas susu dundu su amad sebo shi santan sanla tata do mazi kuwa toma meba ne de dagi ma tranli sheba sheba yin nyanto lengashi samos Chenrezig chogu na tambu tere dundu susu ama santan ama deke tata ma sheba mazi kuwa toma meba ne mandi dagi ma tranli ndeba ne tsindi ma sheba mazi chiwa ngamal ma sheba trangha meba res tranli ndeba ne tranli ndeba sheba yin nyanto ne lenga ji samo si Chenrezig chogu na tambu tere.
Then okay, so number 1, the first point Lama Tsongkhapa makes according to Jayan Sheba as follows. Okay, so Lepsar. So it's page 38, cultivating a remembrance of their kindness. Potawa said that after, so this is Geshe Potawa, he's a great Kadampa master, said that after you have recognized that all living beings are your mothers, you will quickly remember their kindness if at first you cultivate a remembrance of your mother's kindness in this lifetime. Do so in accordance with his presentation as follows. Imagine your mother clearly in front of you, thinking the following a few times. Not only has she been my mother at present, but she has been so an incalculable number of times throughout beginningless cyclic existence. So this is category number 1. And here we find a presentation of analytical meditation and single-pointed meditation as well. Where this first step is utilizing both of those things. Using single-pointed without reasons and signs and so forth, and analytical meditation. Imagine your mother clearly in front of you. So that, as a translator's note, could be single-pointed. Digsung Rinpoche.
다 녀바 드는마 신들 아마 가디 집은 것도 산당 우리스 대다르 대 마시비 뒤소 대다르 수수 아마되게 수수 아마시비 뒤소 아마시비 가서 네 마시비 뒤소 너바 탄제를 짜오사 네 보고들 송조지는 너바 탄제를 짜오그레스 네 펜바 탄제 두그레스 펜바 탄제 니지 오마트야 나 왔던 그 보글 돌루트야 나 왔던 그 너바 펜바 탄제 두그레스 셔바도 츤데야 도모게도 연레부 존스 츤데야 도모 아미 두군 차네 다고 샤주서 말아 아미 두군 준르면 야로 아마가 서서 맞이나 방가서 머리야 요 말어 셔바도 츤데야 도모게도 연레부 존 다고 샤주라고 말해 네 아미 두군 보고 더 good 샤부주 되거로 좀 때네 제비 뒤서 부진진와시 샤이 들어라자스 마지자도 네 보고도 아마기 샬도스 냐네 들어자르 소문지 칼라자 보고도 샤부지거로다 네 너주 오마데거로 오마 데 너부케 칼라 카이데 바면로아 아마고 어디 칸자나 보고 때와 너부케 나루 케시 나도 그걸로 아마 카기시 그래서 아마 장주지에 뭐 보고 장바지 그래서 케시 마장와 라비 시진 더 나주지 중에 매봐 소스 what about 니바
Bless him. Okay. Number 2, as your mother, she protected you from all harm and provided you all benefit and happiness. Particularly in this lifetime, she carried you for a long time in her womb. So she carried you for 9 months and 10 days or so. And if she wasn't careful, there's no way you would be alive. So there had to be some care put into her daily activities while you were in the womb. And then when you were a helpless newborn infant, she held you to the warmth of her flesh and bounced you on the tips of her 10 fingers. So Rinpoche just showed, he put his fans up and showed someone playing with a child. She suckled you at her breast, used her mouth to give you soft food and to remove mucus from your nose. So she gave you milk, and then whenever you were dirty, she wouldn't mind getting dirty to clean you, and used her hand to wipe away your excrement. So in various ways, she nurtured you tirelessly. So this is point number 2 made. Digson Rinpoche.
Yeah. 니버 대다 마시비 뒤서 너바 탄지 레자 펜바 탄지 주사 제바도 츤데야 동방에도 연전부종 동방에도 연전부종 대야 제비 뒤서 부징어시 샤이 들어라자르스 샤이 들어라자르 소문지 칼라이 너주드 너부케 케뉴 나도 케시 마자와 라베 시제 더 나주지 중에 매버 수에서 어디봐도 니바레 노아
Lissar. What's the Lissar?
야
Yanjer Lagu?
that's the lotsana diga
Okay, Lissar.
자 아마 가딘 집에 이바던 가서 어디 마기도 두술 때는 하고도 마기 말베 마기 그 보고도 네 아마는 집에 그런 샴부레 아마가 어디 마기 보고들 시작가 보지도. 마기 책임도 샤단 쇼단 어디서 보고를 시작 잠바래면 돼. 근데 가서 마도 어디 가리치버로 마기 파마다 샤이 파마도 그걸로 추역 계좌가 가야 말어. 그도 라진 그도 저완도
Less so. So when we want to see this relationship, we can even see it in the animal world. When we look at a monkey, and we look at a monkey's child, the child has so much love for the mother, and the mother has so much love for the child. If we look at birds, you see this nurturing taking place where the dependence on the child has on the mother and the mother nurturing the young. So we don't even need to speak of religion or Buddhism or Dharma to see this relationship and this love that exists just looking at monkeys and looking at birds. Dene Rinpoche Chishina de Lapcha, the Amadandra or Laja Irbe.
What the truth danda kashi amal gabu skalo. Ta jugo ko te segado ta amal galo ta kashi amal gabu yamar segado so. Amal gabu meba to the luta res luta.
Less so, the yav.
Ne amakadi shibajira res.
Less so.
Amakadi shibayimba de ne pechu jitabe tang da gu duwa.
Less so.
Ne sai ngwaji le long gu duwa. Ne what the ngaso what the the matana makita to children mata pamata shida shang zhongmu de
So Rinpoche said at this point he'd address something that I had brought up to him, where in the United States and other places as well, but we have this, some people really dislike their mothers or don't have this kind of relationship that maybe in this Asian type of in this book was written from an Asian perspective, and the parental-child relationship might be different than that of our own culture. So we find at times where people say that, well, I can't do this. I think of my mother and I become very angry. I don't have this relationship with my mother. This won't help me to arrive at any conclusion. This will only anger me more. So first, Rinpoche said, just first addressing that point, we have to look at the kindness that we were shown to the degree that we were by our mothers. It's considered a great wrong view for us to have anger and this hatred towards our mothers. So this is something that we really need to work out first and foremost. From an advice perspective, it's very bad. It's considered great non-virtue to have this hatred or anger towards your mother. This is something that really needs to be worked on and taken care of. Rinpoche said that, carrying someone in your womb for 9 months plus alone and is very difficult, and there's a lot of things that someone doing that has to go through that we wouldn't want to. So at least almost an entire year we were shown that kindness. So if Rinpoche just said, we were talking at break, if we can't arrive at that, we can look at relationships others have, or look at the relationship of the monkey, and look at the relationship of the birds, and look at the relationship that others have with their mothers, or others who have been like mothers to us that have those characteristics. We think of them. So Rinpoche gave many examples. He said those who we consider our mothers, who might not be our birth mothers. But first and foremost, he said we need to get rid of that anger at our mother in order for any of it to work. But in order for, if we want a tool to help us with this, we can think of others who are like our mothers, others who've shown us kindness, and look at relationships others have. Okay. Tu Channa Rinpoche. Gonso pen togudu.
Sumba wate tadu mashibe rebi. Tadu wate sumba tenya mashibe pechi rebage. Sumba wate tenyang tregonji duso, zatung tang chabi duso kuyo. Tenyang tregonji duso, pogo chogo duso na ame kala tegro ngomata kala cha sona dolu tegro wa dinde ganin chobore se da 대야 제공지 뒤서 대바선 주고 도바 공바선 가공바 수토스지 말바 대뒤서 자와다 동아 사야 동아 아메 제거레스 차존의 돌루 제거레스 뒤서 그다 폼비 뒤서 어느 보고 좀 차존나 아마 잘라 가려요 봐 이나 아마 그런 거 배제 제마 도비 잘라 간 걸로 보고를 제용레스 폼비 뒤서 너랑기 제마다와 나 신사 수수 잘라서 전부 수수 배제 제마로 간 걸로 보고를 진거레스 가딘 저브레스 어디봐도 송바래.
Okay. So number 3, moreover, when you were hungry and thirsty, she gave you food and drink. When you were cold, clothes. When you were poor, she gave from your wealth those things which were very dear to her. Even more, what she gave to you were not things that she had obtained easily, but she had secured through great hardship while engaging in wrongdoing and receiving ill repute and suffering. Number 3.
어디 니바 송바대지 다든 지바로 왔다 지바 지바든 뭐 어디 송도 다
Okay.
아마 그 보고로 왔대 차송나 칼라 또송나 칼라 사통아 되게 차송나는 돌로 되게스 어디 유지 더나장 들라도 녀네 미지스 아메 자와 집어진 보글 제야 잘라도서 그걸로 아메 렐하버진 라요 말 칼레 몸전 라요 레스 달라도 녀네 미지스 디바 메존진 사요레 동에다 땅에 치두세는 사요레스 디바 메존다 동에다 땅에 치는 사샤비 잘라서 집어도 그 보글 제거레스 디바다 디다 도다 땅에 디바 치두세네 동에 치두세네 땅에 치두세네 네 샤타당지 제네 신바인스 샤타당지 와데 아마 가리 뭐죠 잘라버데 보글 제거레스 신바인 네 볼라나사 나사로 소비 동에 쇼나스 보다 보면 치지 말보다 보다 수수 보글 나사 쇼소나 아마랄 나사 쇼나 가치 그레스 나사로 소비 동에 쇼나 네 버치유 란체 왔던 보고 쳐발래 아마 란체나 가치 그레스 보 나와유 ran nawa das 보고 나와래 아마도 그 나나 가지 그래서 나와다 보두바유 ran 두바 삼바타바네 다시 유 뜻이 타시바인스 어디 다가데 아말고 네바 가요 지금 보고 로비제로다 네발 저거래 송저 제거래 돌로 제거래 칼라 제거래 어떻게 쳐버려서
Okay. And the Kanga Sumba?
네 송바로
Okay.
송바로 지바로
Shipa Kabar Gutso do Rimshi.
지바 유지 더나 장스 친이박 타드레 지바 유지 더나 장스 배 손자 지기 유지 올려 친이박 타드노 유지 더나 장스 유지 더나 장 손자가 올려 친이박
Yuje de Nam Jang.
What
The
the-
Jipa Gutso?
지바
Okay.
되는 거 좋은데
Mitsawala.
아마 보고를 사야 통화 잘라도 못해로다 대학 유지 더나 장 아마 그 릴하고 라요 말 깔리 못전 라요 아레스
Okay,
What the
Detsko
hell,
Rimshi.
Marba?
The NGK, the Puke, the Kabar Detsko. So. I just have to make sure where each one starts and stops. I just want to make sure it's right. Deepa Dunya Dana Dampa. great hardship while engaging in wrongdoing. Deepen Yu-J. Okay. Okay, so number 3, moreover, when you were hungry and thirsty, she gave you food and drink. When you were cold, clothes. When you were poor, she gave from her wealth and those things which were very dear to her. So then number 4 says, even more, what she gave to you were not things that she had obtained easily, but that she had secured through great hardship while engaging in wrongdoing and receiving ill repute and suffering. If you suffered from illness, pain, or threat of death, your mother made the choice from the depths of her heart that she would rather be sick than you sick. She would rather be in pain than you be in pain. She would rather die than you die. By putting this feeling into action, she did what was needed to alleviate these troubles. In short, contemplate how one-pointedly how your mother provided help and happiness and cleared away harm and suffering to the best of her knowledge and ability. To the best of her knowledge and ability. Okay.
This one. Jibatsas.
Jibatsar.
Da jiba ngaban do na se tenore. Ngaban do na. Undo dun ma shuba ina.
Ona rangi shitse. Okay.
Rangi shetse dan nu se ji.
Okay.
Pede kan yin do amal ne ba yue se ge. Ne bogul sa tonga dan tolu dan wo tene ge pede kan ga du re. Pede kan yin do ne ba dan de ngan se wa she bis. Ne ba dan de ngan se wa she ba bogul ne ba jung so. Ne de ngan den na sa shun nam he de ya la so ba de sun ji ro ta. Ne ba dan de ngan se wa she bi. 去那了自己都三宝五，我的俺爸的，我的上呢，自己上当吧，我的俺爸的嘞。俺们不搞的去玩嘛，都进的送吧，人家的嘞是的，都拿是，马上给现在当女自己，偏的刚一住是，俺们那边有自己。안 보고 팬바다 도와주고 그래. 너발이 저거래스. 팬테야라 수바. 너바도 등에 세와 시비 주나라自己도 생바오스. 어떤 거 바래도와.
I think that it's Ngapa
어때?
Dona rangi shetse.
Dona 마랑기 shetse 당 누세지 네 보고 팬바다 도와가 두그레스 너바도 등에 세워시거든 팬테발라서 세워시바 나라 自己도 생바오스 어떤 거 바들에도.
Okay. All right. So I see what I did. All right. So number 4 actually ends at by putting this feeling into action, she did what was needed to alleviate these troubles. Now number 5 starts, in short, contemplate one-pointedly how your mother provided help and happiness and cleared away harm and suffering to the best of her knowledge and ability. So that's number 5. So that one sentence goes into number 5. I apologize for that. It doesn't break into paragraphs in the Tibetan the way it does in the English, so I have to figure out where the breaks are and while hearing the commentary. So it just okay. Ngapa tsar.
다 droba da gombe jinjanbi lo chizang meba shi jenas da gombe amakadi chiba ba gombe ne de da gombe jinjanba gombe jinjanbi lo chizang meba jeba yina de chizang meba jul jeba yina de ne pamala subin za shi yin lang 네 마셰바 셰라 다다 공스 네 파마라 소비 자시제나 빈자다 네 자다 녜다 참말 공송다 제나 다다 셰네 공 되네 바마 자다 녜 가야마 바미시 제라 공스 바만나 장 마셰바 셰라 공사 자다 녜 가야마 이베도 저 아주 아마 셰뇨드로 아 공고레스다 공라 되네 자시던 자이 로제바나 안 달래 공스 다 달래야 되네 어디 진짜부터 공고레스 진짜부터 너무 말로 공 되네 바 말로 공 되네 잘 공고레스 야
Less so. Friends, neutral. Indeed, Kanga, Drupa.
달라 마다 자이 로제바나 안에 다니에 바마송도 마던 자이 로제바나 안에 쇼주 신전 타지 안에 마셰바 호도 땅유 renji 네 자치 처당 땅나 공스 안에 신전 뭐뭐뭐뭐 공고를 송대자
Less so, increase.
공모 소와트바드레 나바 두바
Okay, so number 6. By cultivating a remembrance of your mother's kindness, you will not remember it just in words. Once you have given rise to such a remembrance, recognize that other friends and relatives, such as your father and your mother's, and cultivate a remembrance of their kindness. Let me try that again. Once you have given rise to such a remembrance, recognize that other friends and relatives, such as your father, are your mother's, and cultivate a remembrance of their kindness. Then do the same with persons toward whom you have neutral feelings. Once you have produced an attitude towards them is similar to how you feel toward your friends, recognize that your enemies are your mother's, and cultivate a remembrance of their kindness. When you have an attitude toward your enemies that is like the one you have towards your mother, recognize that all beings in the 10 directions are your mothers, and then gradually, with increasing extensiveness, cultivate a remembrance of their kindness. So here, what this is saying is that you begin first once you get to the point where you recognize this, then you move towards other beings and begin to expand your realization of all sentient beings are my mothers. So you go through it in a way that is a gradual process, a gradual spiritual process. So you begin with your friends, and you look at your friends and your relatives, and you recognize that all of these beings have been your mothers. And then you look at those who are neutral. You think of people who you have neutral feeling towards, not a desire to help or harm, and you begin to recognize that they too are our mothers. And then lastly, because it's the most difficult to realize and convert, is you move on to your enemies and recognize that all of our enemies have been our mothers. And then what you're trying to do is increase this meditation from one person that you're using, your mother, and remembering kindness and so forth, using her as an example, and then moving it out further and further and further to your brother, to your siblings, to your friends, to the neutrals, and then eventually enemies. And you are increasing your object of observation as you do that to where you will eventually end up at all sentient beings. So you have this desire to help all sentient beings because you realize that every single one of them are your mothers. And you arrive at that through all this analysis and so forth. But it requires first starting with our mother and thinking of these things and increasing it and increasing it and increasing it to the point where we recognize that everyone, friends, enemies, neutrals, everyone who has every single relationship to us, with us, etc., is our mother because they have been, and it's the same continuum. It's the same exact continuum. It's not different ones. So this is how we increase the meditation so that we can arrive at what is needed, and that is recognizing all sentient beings are our mothers. So that's the That's the heading of the first step, recognition that all beings are our mothers. So you do that by all beings, all sentient, limitless, countless, all sentient beings. That object of observation you can't start there. You begin by small and then increase it to the point where you end there. Diksong Rinpoche.
다 마시바 다 틴템바 차지 다 틴조 말베 틴조들 대비지 응안다부도가 나 틴조들 응안다부도 자지 보데 틴조 카두들 고아만 응아유지로 고아만 응아유디우데 사징아자 용어래.
Okay. So now we've gone through the cultivation of recognition that all beings are your mothers, and then cultivating a remembrance of their kindness. And now we move on to cultivating the wish to repay your mother's kindness. So we recognize that all sentient beings are our mothers, and that each and every one of those sentient beings that are our objects of observation have been kind in this same way because they are our mothers. And now we move on to this next step, which is a wish to repay their kindness. And there is referring to all sentient beings who are our mothers. So each of these is a step which requires the prior. Diksong Rinpoche. So there's 5 points in this section, according to Jayan Sheba, on cultivating the wish to repay your mother's kindness.
진소 다도데 나 페지 나임버 나는 담부터는 말에 대더래 제시표비 뭐 마시바 마뚜바 다게 마틴제 두해신 좀해바 더나 네 지메돈 돈에 라니 코알레 제타시나 텔레 최종화 매데 로마라 timbalese 로마라 timba sukare lebe bawure
Romala Timbale.
로마라 timbalese
Sindigomen.
tanda kumurbe 로마라 timbale
The Sheting done the
yedu kuyu jasu konso chujoba loge nado Hwa tabu hajin to 제시표비 고마시바 대본에 게드 제타르 셰나 델레 체부메 제소스 와드 나가나 다부터 어디바든 이사래
Yeah, that's Sindigomen.
전화 고마르베
Less so.
그러면 전화 고마이 바래
Less so.
대들 제시표비 근데 가서 제와 가마 셔마 듣는 가서 대고 말에 제송어서 제는 오마시 봐서 마두바 다게 마티제 샤다레스 진짜 동해신 좀해 봤더나 그래서 제메지 돈에 유네 라니 코알레 제다시나 들레 최종화메데 들레 모사 저 요마레스 로마레 timbalese 전다 고민이 말해. 얘도 그 자수 혼수 취조바 그 자수 등에 그 자수 혼수 취조바 로게 나도 홍아 따보 타진도 제시표비 뭐 마시바 더보네 뭐 마시바 더 요네 게데 제다 소소 내손다 그 등에 다 시릴 제다시바 이나 될 모사초요 말레스 저범에 제소서 왔다봐도 담보들 담보
Rinpoche, the Temepa, the Geshe Shegadu, then the Cheran, the Nyanyin le Depa le Geche, then Cheran Gutsagadu, Gangen Sena.
테메바도 수수집을 코알 탄도 제도 거로 어디서 레도 거다.
Kon the Temepa Geshe Shegadu.
Yeah.
Okay, then the Tumble.
Tumble.
Okay. So the cultivating the wish to repay your mother's kindness. These beings, your kind mothers, whom you do not recognize due to the process of death and rebirth, are suffering and have no refuge. There is nothing more shameful than to do your best to liberate yourself from cyclic existence while considering these beings your mother, unimportant and your mothers, unimportant and abandoning them. Chandra Groman's letter to the student states, While you see that your relatives are engulfed in the ocean of cyclic existence and are as if fallen into a pit of fire, there is nothing more shameful than to work for your own liberation, neglecting those whom you do not recognize due to the process of death and rebirth. So here it's stating that all sentient beings, while you see that your relatives are engulfed in the ocean of cyclic existence, so it's saying that you see that all these sentient beings who are related to you, who are your mothers, are engulfed in cyclic suffering, in the suffering of cyclic existence, we call it the ocean of suffering. So that's speaking of samsara, the suffering of cyclic existence. And it's speaking here to a Hinayyanist, or a Theravadan, saying, there is nothing more shameful than to work for your own liberation, so for your own nirvana, when you see that all of these other beings who are your mothers are caught in cyclic existence. How could you just work for your own welfare? It says, neglecting those whom you do not recognize due to the process of death and rebirth. So you've forgotten them because of death and rebirth. You don't remember they're your mothers, but they are. And if they are, how shameful if you don't work to help them. Digso. That's point one.
다 진수어데 나가는 담부치 다 니바로 니바 되네 대답이 진진 도안스 아마 진진 도데 요샤바이나 도안네 마르나지아 머리나스 마르버속에 어때 디그마레스 머리나 다기 추던 갈라 튠하도 산에 네 진네 코르유 코존데스 아말 진네 조약산 당고레스 데니레스 로마를 집에 이제로 로마를 집에 데니레 셰바포나 자와 제야 마누베스 보고 조종 아말 제네데 아메 봉갈로데 보고 가가이는 뭐라므로
Buddha
마누베
Yes.
네 라기 너지 샴비 슈지 자톤 danse ane omati ane za toa ama tegro ta ngewa moden shan la temba tada under ane kale mo den ne pul shamba jewore shamba la den tada under shidu maro shina wa sushi trosa what did 마르바조 보면은 나는 제시 상주선바서 가는 rig 마레 송된사래 소시조 강기 콘데 거년에 내시시 강기 지유 산지 네 순진 데 람바스 순진 데 람바 녀모도다 동에 저면데 보내 로마로 다시 실랑 수시조 셰당사 수시조 셰당原先 타이바 떼발레장 세제가다 말이 동비 삼바 구비 루드제 파담 버초로 나지 달라니고 셰비 펜타바 다다 땅에 제부 타와셰바라니 가다셰바데 다기 추마레스 디그마레스 텔레 최진로아 동은 텔레 최지 로앙메 네타르 제레 현라타 네 제송소 소데바도 니바드레도 니바 테제무도와
Longni.
로니.
Okay. So, number two, therefore reflect, if abandoning such kind beings is unsuitable even for disreputable persons, how could it be appropriate in my case, and then assume the responsibility to repay their kindness? The same text states, the infant on the mother's lap cannot do anything. Rinpoche said it's just like a bug. You can't do anything whatsoever. And suckles milk which flows through love. while through that same love the mother endures many hardships. Who even among the very disreputable would like to abandon his or her mother? Who, even among the most disreputable, wants to leave and abandon those who provided a home, who carefully looked after the child with compassion, and who are afflicted without refuge and suffering? And then we have a quote from the praise of infinite qualities. Let's try it. Triratsna Dasa's praise of infinite qualities states, "It's not my way to liberate myself while abandoning these beings, whose blind ignorance ruins their intelligence, and who are my fathers and children, serving and lovingly helping me. Thinking this, I made aspirational prayers to liberate these protectorless beings." So that's number Nipa 2.
Nipa tsaro. Wadazwa.
Tsar.
Ta somba den wana se den mare. Somba den wana se den. Wana penle sheba de jetabu shananas. Ama garin sheba ita amal penle je wores. Penle kar je worsana. Saji ki penle je dan digre same gugores. Triba ina wana penle jetabu shi shanana. Ma rangi jang ku ne denjur jetan to des ne ku longshe pensung zoba lai longshe mei longshe pensung zoba taji ama kurung hama to yo res to ne ko tanda koal ko du gore saji ge pendu gun rig mares saba me be tabal thia saji sal thia odne ji gugur so de sare ona phenle sheba chetabu shanyana ma rangi jang ku denjur jetanshi to de Tata Tanji ne Maluba mes ama kurung haman lhadang madang wa dinji pansu mabu tuyo are taso kanga ama lho sabares Maluba me te na jusen te ishina daki ne ngwenchi nyomo bi dunji lambi ongi me ne madrabu shun simbala 마드라부 쇼신발라 바살라 수비 주지 데바단 라와사 바살라 수비 주지 데바단 라와 라지지 두게와 조바단나라 하야 동에나도 제바다 샴베 펜다바 드다네 타바냥을 대비 드왈랑고 바샤오 냐도 펜렌시 구데스 다가다 타발티야 선지 살티야게 네 아마 마겐도 그걸로 타발티야 타발은 거야 선지 살은 거야게 펜에도 어디 아주 산당 거레스 그 변속이 펜에도나 아마 그런 그 변속 뭐부터 잡아야돼 그 변속 아마 론에 다다 고을 그대레스 펜에도 타발티야 선지 살티야게 펜에지야게 산당 거레스 또 손에 있어야 ona phene chitabu shena ma rangi chang khudwa denju chasanshi tote tada thanji ji maluba mes ama khunu ki khu phonsu mabu khunu toyo ares khu phonsu ren tada khwal khudya res jusen te shena tena dagi khwechi nyomo bi dwenji lambi ongi phene ne matrabu shon simbalas 마다부 존세바라 마가주 조불 트렌다마지 마지바이나 들 차슈바이나 나사 천루거로 왔다 바살라수빈 주진 대바던 라와 라지지 도경와 줘바 나라 하얀 등에 나도 제바던스 내가 도와요나 야자 등에 정우레스 샴베스 펜타바드네 타바냥알레데바 샴베군나라데 오데 펜타데 타발티야 소제 살티야 어떤 그 펜타가 살던 거레스 샴비 펜타바트나 타반양알렌데비 도알랑고바 샤오 냐도 펜렌샤고데 우마니불레스 우마니불레 제영외지 녀무비 된질라바 다기네 말란주지 데바진 Dungen Napa, Kandushi, Jawa Yenduan, Kandaki, Shantan, Nyagu Pembashi, Tala Lando Pendaba, Nyangandil Chishus, Nyandil Tia, Tabal Tia, what the Ashur is a penna. What is one of these Amara?
So,
Yeah.
the Sumba?
Okay.
Okay, so number 3, how can you repay their help? So here we have a question and answer Lama Tsongkhapa is presenting where doubts may arise. How can you repay their help? No matter how much wealth and happiness your mothers obtain in cyclic existence, it all deceives them. Thus you must repay their help, thinking, formerly my mothers were seriously wounded because of the madness of the afflictions possessed them. Then I produced a variety of further sufferings for those beings who were already suffering as I applied sea salt to their deep wounds. Now I will establish these beings who lovingly help me in the happiness of liberation, nirvana. And then Baba Vega's Heart of the Middle Way states, furthermore, like applying salt to the wounds of those who have been possessed by the madness of their afflictions, I created suffering for those sick with suffering. Now what else is there other than nirvana to repay those who in other lives helped me with love and service? So all sentient beings have helped me, have been my mother. I've harmed all sentient beings. And just regular wealth, just the excellent qualities are the material things that we find in the realms, in the higher realms, wouldn't truly help if we wanted to repay our mother's kindness. So the way we can truly repay kindness is by offering liberation, by offering cessation of suffering, because just the excellent qualities within cyclic existence are fleeting. And it says that our mothers, it says were wounded because of the madness of their afflictions. And Rinpoche said it's like the Lama Tsongkhapa is comparing it to like a gunshot wound, an actual wound that someone has. And that's what the afflictions do to us. It wounds us. It makes us not able to get out. So here the plan is to try to then give back what has been freely given by our mothers to us and give them happiness, because we know that wealth and things that we think lead to happiness are impermanent and can't completely help them. Happiness in this case is nirvana, is liberation, a pure happiness, and that's what we want to give to them. So that's number 3, and we'll end here, and we'll get back to this. He said, we'll get back to it next time, Rinpoche said.
Yeah.
And thank you all for listening, and we'll do the concluding prayers. And don't forget that we have class this Wednesday at 9 o'clock, and that's it. Concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. Class only for those who are not Buddhists. You know, if you get enlightened between now and then, you don't need to come. It could happen. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of happiness. Powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Yatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, a spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. 2G Rinpoche Gutsi Shapi Denranang, Atsu Lamrim Shemo Kangat Triyanang.